Alrighty everyone, hello, and welcome back to another episode of my nonsense, and certainly a little something of B-Log's nonsense. B-Log, who's finally free from the cage after he kept knocking all of my items around and also trying to distract me while filming this week's sermon. If y'all don't know, and you are looking for a kind of digital church for Christian witches, we have one. It's the Ministry of Christ under the Order of Divine Mysticism, and you should absolutely go over and not only subscribe to that YouTube channel, but join our Discord where we have all kinds of great conversations about all kinds of subjects over there with a great community. These guys are awesome in this community. You would love them. So check it out. And if you hear any hoodling and doodling, yes, that is B-Log. He is my pigeon. Let's see if I can get him over here. Come here. Come on. Yep. What? And there he is playing with Bottle Wife. Oh, it's Bottle Wife Bim. He also gets very mad when I sit in this chair because this is actually his special chair and he doesn't want me to sit in it. So he's always fighting me to get me out of his special chair. But unfortunately, I'm the one who paid for this chair. I'm the reason this chair exists. So therefore, I'm going to sit in it if I want to sit in it. Yeah, evil boy. Evil boy. Goofy bird antics aside. We got an interesting subject today. Now, last time, I asked, do we want to do some deep dives into these more new age to Christian content creators? And some folks said yes, so why the hell not? You know what I mean? And our first stop is definitely in this Mia new age to Christ that I have discovered. Now, the thing about these little, deep dives is that, they can only get so deep, right? It's really just where instead of doing a reaction video to a bunch of disparate, content pieces, I really want to just hone in on one creator and see what the kind of stuff they're about and maybe see if we get some diagnostics running. Now, I'm not here to look at other people's allegations about them or other stuff that has been said about them. I'm here to look at their page, kind of do a spiritual audit and see what the hell we're working with when it comes to these ex-New Age to Christian types. So, before we get into all that though, hi, my name is Sara Streisand. As you might have guessed, I am a Christian witch, a content creator, writer, educator, specifically a writer of these two books right here, which are a fantastic one-stop shop if you're hearing about Christian witchcraft for the first time and you don't understand how that works. These books pretty much cover the whole thing, the argument for how it's possible, as well as what you might expect when you go on this journey, right? That kind of mysticism situation. So all that's in those two books, but if you don't want books just yet, that's fine. Just go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and ring the bell, because we do make videos like this every single Friday. And if you want to get them 2 weeks early and ad-free, all you gotta do is head over to my Patreon, where I post these videos and a lot of other stuff. Why are you so evil? Why are you just an evil baby man? Anyway, Mia over here. So, there was a lot of content that I looked at from this person's page, and when I look at this kind of stuff, I'm almost kind of wondering at this point. We're going to start off with this question that I'm going to pose to y'all, and that I am going to maybe consider myself over the course of this video, and that is that I almost kind of wonder if New Age to Christian, Christian to New Age is kind of its own closed ecosystem at this point, to the point that it's kind of man, do I even really need to poke my nose into it? Because what I notice about New Age to Christian, because what I notice about this New Age to Christian, Christian to New Age kind of I don't know, washer machine cycle here, is that the reason it happens so easily is because they're speaking the same language. Because they're doing the same stuff over and over and over again. Anyway, with Mia over here, right? So I did check out a couple things. I checked out her TikTok, I checked out her Instagram, and I checked out this website that she has where she offers coaching. Because as you might imagine, it's not really a true New Age to Christian journey unless you can somehow monetize this by creating some kind of coaching situation. Here's my problem with this though. When I go to her website and I look at the whole coaching situation, she has this disclaimer at the bottom that it just sets me a little wary. You know what I mean? I was gonna say sets me off, but not quite. It doesn't make me angry. It just makes me, right? She says, this is not a replacement for a local church or pastoral guidance. I'm not a pastor. I'm a sister in Christ who comes alongside you to help you process this transition, find clarity, and become more grounded as you move forward. My heart is to support you in a way that complements, not replaces, being rooted in a church community. language.exe has like stopped working. What do you mean my heart is to support you? What? Did you mean your goal, your mission? Your heart is in the place to? Like what? Whatever. We're not going to nitpick right now with that. Still, my point with bringing this point up is, okay, so we seem to be seeing this an awful lot right now, which is we're watching people kind of flip-flop and still want to hold on to a place of authority. Where, you know, they're doing all this kind of new agey stuff on one hand, they're, you know, moving all over the place, they're traveling the world, they're seeing things, they're doing all these ceremonies and blah, 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 blah. And then they get saved or whatever, and like within a year, they're out there just thumping that Bible, speaking all them words, talking about stuff with so much confidence and yet so little information, never wanting to let go of the need for a platform. I've seen this several times now where people will either shift the content on their page or completely make a new page, funnel their old audience over to it, and just continue sitting in this place of authority that isn't one that you can really earn like that. You know what I mean? I mean, if I put this in my own perspective, as a Christian witch, as someone who's been making Christian witch content for 4 or 5 years now at this point, that 4 or 5 years wasn't when I started the witchcraft. I had been learning about witchcraft and about Christianity and about their fusion for about 10 years before that. And even then I hadn't learned all that I had learned now. Even then I didn't know everything I know now. What I know now, like, puts to shame that 10 years, you know? Because I was a child. I was 14. Maybe even a little bit earlier when I was getting into just the witchcraft part, looking into this stuff, figuring it out. But even then, I remember being 11 years old reading Judica Ill's Pure Magic, and as much as a fucking slog that was to get through, I still was reading books. I was reading, like, actual sources on shit. I was trying to figure things out at 11 with no family that could help, introduce me to this stuff, with no mentors of any kind. I was just doing my diddly damnedest and trying to figure it out, trying to read Bible for myself, trying to get the story for myself, trying to understand what the hell is going on in any sense of the word, trying to see others' perspectives and learn from other mentors. There was a lot of time I spent just figuring my shit out before I came anywhere near any kind of place of authority. I had a Tumblr blog, maybe, where I was sharing my perspective, and somehow I got, I don't know, some traction on there, but I was just minding my fucking business trying to, like, be on Tumblr. Honestly, I wasn't really trying to be, like, an influencer. That wasn't really a thing yet. And I've also put my ass out there a lot. Like, I have had my ass in my hands a few times publicly, because part of this whole thing that I'm doing with my own social media is learning alongside people. So, you know, now that I'm like 5 years deep of doing a very public learning journey, now it's like, yeah, I can be at the point where I can, understand and assess things a lot faster, where I can speak with a lot more confidence, where I can seem a lot less shaken in what I'm doing, because I've been doing it for well over a decade at this point, and some of it I've done very, very intensely in the public eye, and made mistakes in the public eye, and been corrected accordingly. So, like, watching these people do this new age to Christian thing, making these platforms, and then immediately trying to monetize them always has me like, interesting. Because when I click this book your session button on this website, brings me to a Calendly link. Calendly just being like where you can, schedule some whatever. And it's a $99 session for an hour and a half, which is kind of nutty. And so this thing, right, web conferencing, it's like, this is a focused 90-minute one-on-one session designed to help you make sense of where you are spiritually and how to move forward. This session is for those who have left the new age or are in the process of leaving and feel unsettled, confused, or unsure what to do next. During our time together, we will untangle spiritual confusion and lingering questions, help you process what you've experienced, bring clarity to what's true and what's not, identify where you may feel stuck or unstable, and give you a clear next steps in moving forward in Christ. This is not a service level conversation. It's a space to be honest about where you are and receive grounded, biblically rooted guidance. Many people start with a clarity session, and if deeper support is needed, we continue working together over time. This is a paid session designed to give you real clarity and direction, not just a quick call. And again, right, so my questions become, okay, so biblically rooted guidance, where is your theology degree, Mia? Where is your bookshelf of theological or historical or anthropological texts? Where is any evidence that you have done more than just read the Bible in English at face value? Because I would not take advice from anyone about the Bible if they have not dug into it, right? You don't need to be a Dan McClellan and have a PhD in biblical studies to know this kind of stuff. But if I ask you a question and you just kind of spit a verse at me, right? That doesn't cut it. That doesn't do anything. Anyone can just spit verses uncritically without thinking about them or breaking them down into their proper sociopolitical context and linguistic context. Not anyone can actually just do that work to understand what the fuck is going on. So I'm immediately full of red flags. Also, right, bring clarity to what's true and what's not. What does this mean? What does this mean, Mia? When we're talking about what's true and what's not, this is something that is a lot harder to figure out than you think it is when you say that things are objectively true. And that is something she likes to do a lot, right? So if we step away from her website and we go to her content, there are several videos where she does these tried and true things we've seen other evangelicals do. I'm thinking of Tim and whoever over here with this anti-deconstruction book. I forgot what the fuck their names are, it doesn't matter. But they were saying that, there's an objective truth in Christianity. There's objective reality. But they're always saying there's objective truth. The Bible, shows us that God is objectively true, as if the Bible is proof of itself. Right? They always do this, and it's like, well, no, the problem is that there can be no objective truth if it's not something that you can concretely prove and back up with science. God is kind of outside the bounds of science. You can't really prove or disprove him, right? This is a realm that science can't really touch with this whole kind of thing. We can't make some kind of fucking experiment and do some calculation to prove that God is real. Objective is not the word to use when we're talking about this kind of stuff, unless we're talking about the principles in the religion. Like the idea that love is a creative force, right? Love that we have for ourselves, for our families, for strangers. Love is a creative and life engendering force. This is, I would say, objectively true, because this is something we do have evidence of, right? We have evidence of, just that pure unconditional love being really healing and helpful for people, being really good for their mental health, being really good for communities to knit together into bond, and all these other kinds of things, right? We can measure that social aspect of love is a very powerful force that pushes for the betterment of communities all the time. That's a sociological question we can actually dig into, and that is something that Christianity affirms. So it's like, okay, those are the kinds of things, yeah, sure, but the idea of dude in the sky just objectively rolling around on his throne, no, you're not gonna find yes, at this exact coordinate in the sky is Mr. Old Lightning Man on his chariot. You're not gonna fucking find that. You know what I mean? So that's why it's hold on. Playing around with these ideas of truth and all that. Settle down, Mia. We're getting into realms that I don't think, based on everything I've already seen, she has any sense of what that means. But, whatever. Let's also look right at this about page. Here we go. Hi, I'm Mia. I've spent years deeply involved in the New Age before coming to Christ. I know what it's like to feel confused, overwhelmed, and unsure what's actually true even after deciding to follow Jesus. There's often more to untangle than people expect, not just basic questions, but personal experiences, lingering beliefs, and things that just don't fully make sense yet. With over 6 years of coaching experience, I now help others navigate this process by helping you actually move forward in a way that feels stable and grounded. I like that it says in a way that makes you feel, or in a way that feels stable and grounded, because that doesn't necessarily mean that it is. It just means that it feels that way. It's a little Freudian slip there. But anyway, this is a space where you can be honest about where you are, ask real questions, and begin rebuilding your life on a firm foundation in Christ. So then there's just more of whatever's going on in that little book session thing, right? But she promises that anyone who's taking a coaching session with her will leave with practical next steps and a clear sense of direction. We're using this phrase, untangle spiritual confusion, a lot now. There's also not really any consistent punctuation on here. And some quite performative, photography on here, right? But basically, this Mia person is positing herself to be this kind of coach for the transition between New Age and Christianity. Fine. And maybe you're listening to me talk about this already and saying, Sarah, you're being very uncharitable. But again, right, this isn't just a reaction video. I have already looked at quite a bit of Mia's stuff here, and I'm not going to show you the entire 24 minutes of her New Age to Christian testimony, but I'll give you some of the highlights. And let me start off the back by saying, I sympathize with Mia's plight. I don't think that this is someone I can pick on for her experiences, because her experiences are rough. Her experiences are harsh. So trigger warning for self-deletion and, you know, not good actions. Thank you, YouTube, for making it so I can't say regular goddamn words on here. In her testimony, she points out she's getting into all this New Age stuff, and then she loses her mother to Selbstmord. We'll use the German word because fuck it, why not? Selbstmord. Okay, so like, okay, that's terrible. And I'm not here to like poke fun at that and that kind of pain. I'm not here to say that like this is, you know, just some goofy haha whatever. And on top of that, she mentions that she has been experiencing all manners of harm from her romantic partners at this time in her life as well. So she's dealing with a lot of her own feelings of maybe not wanting to be around anymore, of depression and all these other things. That's a serious thing. I'm not going to sit here and downplay that kind of darkness. I know we see it a lot, right? We see it a lot with these witch to Christian kind of things where they're like, oh, I was in such a dark place, I was in such a terrible time. With all of these, I'm never going to sit here and make fun of someone for being in a dark place. What I am going to kind of press on is the idea that, therefore, the entity that magically showed up and called itself Jesus is actually Jesus when you are clearly in a vulnerable state of being, when you're clearly in a massive hurt and pain and all these other things. Because that is a point where it is very easily to be taken advantage of. In all directions, not just in a Christian direction. Right? So many people get taken advantage of in the opposite direction too. When they lose a partner or a spouse or something, and then they're going to these kind of like hack psychic mediums or something, and getting all of these scammy people trying to like sell them contact with their loved ones that have passed on, right? Like, it works in both directions. It works in multiple directions, where people end up being in a vulnerable state, and where people with predatory intentions come and get them. And in this case, spirits with predatory intentions come and get them. So like, there's never a time where I'm going to sit here and say like, you know, this is funny, or this is what they get, or like something crazy like that. That's absolutely not. However, right, with all this kind of stuff, it's the stuff that she says directly before that in the testimony that had me like, girl. In my defense of being persnickety off the bat with Mia here and her website, let's take a little gander. Let's take a listen.
If you recently left the New Age and are coming to Jesus, or are starting to question things in the New Age and are starting to maybe see the cracks and the deception that's happening there, then I want to share my testimony with you, because I was in the New Age for 9 years before I found Jesus. I found this video, and it totally opened my mind up. I was like so blown away. I thought I had figured out the secret to humanity's history with ancient Egypt and Lemuria and Atlantis and crystals and all of this stuff.
Girl, goddamn. So, this is what I'm saying when I'm talking about, I think at this point New Age has kind of become a closed ecosystem, because I noticed that a lot of the goofy gooberness of New Age always has to do with that kind of shit. Like, New Age nonsense definitely has to do with a lot of like goofy conspiracies and bad archaeology. And in fact, another channel for y'all to check out that I really, really like is Mini Minuteman, and he goes over a lot of like different people's conspiracies, especially more on like the right-wing thing, and like the right-wing like health shills, like that I don't know, something Zeba guy, I don't know. You got to go look at that, right? And also look at like Awful Archaeology. That's a great series that he does where he talks about a lot of this kind of stuff, right? Where just mass archaeologists and stuff like Ancient Aliens and all that, they'll go around to just make the zaniest, goofiest freaking claims. They'll just make shit up as if ancient people were dumb and couldn't have possibly built their own structures. As if, you know, everything was done by aliens, or as if there's some lost city of Atlantis that TM, always vague, and don't want you to know about, and blah, blah, blah. Like, these are the kinds of conspiracies that New Age people seem to frequently fall into, because they grew up in a culture that does not value proper research and like understand the need for structured sciences and structured like disciplines like archaeology and anthropology and social sciences and other things like this. We live in an age that unfortunately equates experience and things like testimony with like actual scholarship and study and breakdown, like linguistics and all these different other things, these analyses of scripture and all this other stuff, right? We live in this world that makes these seem the same, or that has put such a shadow of doubt and suspicion on the institutions of academia that help us know what we know about this world. And because of that, we're frequently getting these kinds of takes from these people where, oh, I thought I had it all figured out, and they just start repeating buzzwords and fucking conspiracies. And so, well, of course you didn't have it figured out. You don't have to be a spiritual person of any kind to know that that's bullshit. You just have to be someone who respects science and scientists. I didn't need to be Christian or a witch or anything to tell you that Atlantis and aliens is fucking dumb when in context of this conversation. But in part 1 alone of her testimony, right, deep diving now into like what's going on, her full testimony, and understanding like how she got to where she is, she seems to have encountered other people who were just as kind of like fucked as her. In terms of like things that they were believing, someone who claimed to be a reincarnation of a Greek god, of an Egyptian god, of blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff.
The person I was with struggled a lot with mental illness, and they were experiencing what a lot of people are calling spiritual psychosis. And in this specific situation, it was to the degree that this person thought that they were the reincarnation of an Egyptian god, also the reincarnation of a Greek god, and they were continuing to challenge me on who I was. So they kept telling me that I was always just like a little fairy. That was the spirit that was like incarnated in me, according to this person. And they always questioned like, when are you going to become a goddess? You're always just like playing around like a little fairy. When are you going to be a goddess? And they always wanted me to deny the name that I was born with, Mia, and take on a new name based on like a different goddess that they thought that I was actually the reincarnation of, but I just hadn't realized that yet. And I see this a lot in the New Age, people giving up their human names and denying their human selves and trying to be gods.
Throwing around the term like spiritual psychosis, which normally I'm reserved about throwing around, but yeah, if someone's telling you they're the reincarnation of like Apollo or some shit, safe to say that that person is not doing mentally well upstairs. Nonetheless, right? She's got that kind of thing going on. And, it seems like her and whatever other people she's dealing with in this circle, in this system, are extremely ungrounded, are extremely, prone to being swayed by interesting ideas that don't actually hold weight in reality. And all those kinds of things. She makes a joke herself that like everyone's a reincarnation of Cleopatra. And she makes an interesting point here that like I don't entirely disagree with actually.
And this is so sad now that I'm outside of it, because God has made us human and he loves his creation. He loves human beings. And I just started to realize how damaging that was and how messed up it was too, to deny who you are as a human and try to be something that you're not just because you're so unhappy with your life that you need to try and convince yourself that, no, I'm not actually the person that God made me. I am a god. I'm the reincarnation of Cleopatra. Everyone in the New Age is the reincarnation of Cleopatra, for example.
That's important, right? That idea that like people never want to just be people. They always want to be something extra. It's like they don't like the idea that like they are just people. I'll say this to be charitable to Mia. Not every single thing she says on her page is necessarily wrong. It's not necessarily something I disagree with. It's just that in the grander context of everything she says, that puts a damper on it. But I'll give her this, that yeah, a lot of people do seem to want to be fucking special. A lot of people want to treat life like they're in an anime or something, and that they can just like, I don't know, Judgment Knights of Thunder their problems away, right? Like they're not content to just be. They're not content to just exist. And this is something that I talk about all the time when I see this kind of stuff happening with the, many people who go from New Age to Christian. A lot of them don't realize that like you don't have to call yourself a witch. You don't have to be super spiritual or whatever to just like casually have spirituality. You can just be a human being. You can be a normal person. There's nothing wrong with being a normal person. Trust. There's nothing wrong with just going to work, playing your video games, loving on your family and your pets and your friends, going out, having a good time, and then also just like, being conscious and spiritual and trying to improve yourself at the same time. Of course, yeah. There's nothing wrong with being the human that God has made us to be. Sure, yeah, absolutely. In fact, my priest, when he ends his sermons, he always says, go and be what God made you to be, nothing more, nothing less, right? Be what you are made to be, whatever that is. So I can agree with that sentiment, right? That people just seem to be wanting to claw for more significance, for more purpose and meaning in a world that seems very hard-pressed to give us any of that with the individualistic society we have made, where we are, no longer really in communities with set, roles and structures. There is no more baker and weaver and, town council or whatever, really. There's just us on our lonesome trying to do everything by ourselves, trying to cook all our food, clean all our house, work all our job, do all this stuff by ourselves. And that feels rough. It feels like we are disconnected from others and from any kind of purpose or role. We have to start inventing roles psychologically for ourselves. And that's where I feel like a lot of this comes from. Again, I'm no psychologist. This is my armchair psychology opinion. But that's what I think is happening there. And I don't disagree with Mia pointing out that people be doing that. What I do think is silly is how then she continues to again show that she really doesn't have the means to be going up and fucking charging $100 for a 90-minute session when she says shit like this.
And there were certain things that I learned in the coaching industry as I started to get trained in coaching myself for my own career, as well as doing it for my own healing. That did help to a certain degree. There are certain things about psychology and about the way that the human mind works that was really helpful for me to learn and to start to change the way I was talking to myself and treating myself. And so there were times where it felt like I would go a step forward, but then something would happen and I would fall 2 steps back. And then it was like, okay, I have to now do Reiki, and I'll go a step forward and then I'll fall 2 steps back again. And okay, well maybe now my chakras just aren't aligned. So I'll do that and go up and back and up and back. And it just became this never ending hamster wheel of working and working and working to become more and more spiritual, more and more enlightened, and more healed. And it never seemed like there was really an end to the healing. And that's one of the things that happens in the New Age is people will say that growth is not linear. I used to say that a lot myself. I used to say it doesn't look like a linear trajectory. It looks more like a spiral. And every time that you fall down, you're really just expanding and growing and becoming more of yourself and all of that stuff. When in actuality, it's just a hamster wheel. You're just continuing to work and work and work, and you're never actually going to get there doing it that way. And that's sort of one of the ways that the New Age gaslights you, is it tells you that, if you're going into, a really dark place and you're feeling like your whole world is falling apart, you don't even know who you are anymore because you keep asking all these questions, doing all this self-inquiry work, and then they just say, oh, well, you're just going through a dark night of the soul. This is just a part of your enlightenment process. And it's part of your ascension symptoms to be having physical issues and feeling like you don't know who you are anymore or feel like you're going crazy. That's okay. That's part of your enlightenment process. I can tell you it's not.
Mia, girlfriend Mia, what are you talking about? What are you talking about that the New Age gaslights you into thinking that the work is never done? That is quite literally the truth. The truth is that you're never done working on yourself. There's never a time in your life where you're going to be done growing or learning or experiencing things. That's not a New Age invention. That is literally just a fact of life. Same thing also with this idea that you're not supposed to be struggling all the time. You're not always supposed to be having a dark night of the soul. I mean, yeah, you're not supposed to be going through it 24/7. Absolutely. That's not good. But she says it as if you're not supposed to be going through anything at all. She says it as if, and she even says the term dark night of the soul. She acts like that's a New Age thing. That is not a New Age thing. St. John of the Cross, a Christian saint, a Carmelite monk, coined that term. And he coined that term because he had been betrayed by his fellow monks and he felt distant from God in that time. He was a Catholic man. He was a Catholic Spanish Catholic, right? Working closely with St. Teresa of Avila to reform that Carmelite order. That's not a New Age thing. That term has been around for 500 years at this point. And it's just describing that truth of spirituality, which is that there will be times when it feels like God has abandoned you because you just can't understand why bad things are happening to you. And the fact is that God is still in those moments. He's just hard to perceive because he doesn't look or act or exist the way that we're told he's supposed to. It's part of the purgatory process, that purgation of stripping away our illusions about God and what he is and what he does. It's part of the mystic journey that St. Teresa of Avila describes in her Interior Castle. It is a part of Christian life and mysticism and spirituality and direct relationship with God, which is something she says a lot and talks about a lot, her relationship with God. So for her to call this some New Age invention and to say that, the New Age gaslights you into thinking that you're never going to be done, growing and learning is so silly, because that's literally it. That's literally what it means to be alive, is to grow and to learn and to change. That goes against the fundamental Christian idea of the fact that we are all, in need of grace to begin with, because we're not perfect. If we're not perfect, then there's never going to be a time when our lives will be perfect. There's never going to be a time where we don't struggle, where we don't make mistakes, where we don't, cause our own pain or experience pain caused by someone else's imperfectness. That is life. The thing is, with God, we can get through it. And what's funny is that as much as she just says that in part 1 of her testimony, in another video somewhere else on her page, she also says that. She also says what I'm saying, right? Check this out.
A lot of the time when we go through spiritual warfare or times of trials and suffering in our life, it can be really easy to focus more on why is this happening and how do I make it stop? And oftentimes this is where we really miss such a big part of the picture, because we have to remember that God is always working in the suffering. He is always doing things so much deeper and so much further beyond what we can comprehend in the moment. And if we're only focused on how to make it stop and how to, close the demonic doors, or how to make the attack stop and how to just move forward to feeling good again, then we may be missing so much of what God is doing in that moment.
Huh? So wait, Mia, which one is it? Is it that, wait, no, we never we never have to go through hard times. God's just gonna magically, yay, hooray, stop us from having this endless growth? Or is it that God uses the hard, bad times to make us trust him more? Which one is it, Mia? Which one is it? What are you talking about? It seems like, I think what she's getting at is this idea that if your life sucks in the New Age, it's because, it must be that there is some thing you need to do, or some challenge you need to overcome all the time, always. And I can see that being really frustrating. I can see that being very frustrating, being told that, if you're struggling, it's because you're not spiritual enough, and you're not grounding enough, and you're not doing your shadow work enough. Just like I'm sure it's frustrating for people to be told that, if you're depressed or sad or going through it, you're not praying enough, you're not trusting God enough, you're not going to church enough. Again, see how I'm saying that New Age and evangelical Christianity are in fact a system, are a closed fucking capsule here. They're their own ecosystem, and they just kind of switch places with each other a lot, because the language and the rhetoric is one-to-one. And in fact, so too is the spiritual fugue that she kind of perceives in some of these parts of her testimony. Part 2, she starts describing these people who, based on her description, in my opinion, are clearly dissociating, right? She says this.
When I would interact with people who are in the New Age, they are way up here. They're way I don't even know how to explain it, but if you know, you know. It's they're not really in their bodies. They're not really fully present with you. It's very wow, everything is so magical, and we're manifesting our reality, and everything is just a reflection. And, they do a lot of these yeah, man, oh my gosh. And, it's, it's so performative. When I would hang out with these normal people, I was wow, these people are so kind. They're present with me. I can feel that they're in their bodies, and they're normal. And it feels great to be around normal people. Wow, I've missed this. I can just have a normal conversation and just be a normal human being, and they can have real empathy with me, because it's not all about, self-love, me. I need to protect myself from your energy. Everything that you're saying is just a projection. All of the stuff that people say in the New Age to protect themselves from other people, and really they're anchored in spiritual narcissism, to put it bluntly.
And it's like, yeah, the fog in the eyes and the constant like spiritual, or rather emotional, like distance and like shielding like that. Yeah, that's something we see a lot in evangelical circles too. That kind of blank stare and that emotional bypassing, right? With the, oh, you know, everything happens for a reason. Oh, don't be sad that your family died. They're with Jesus now. Why are you sad? There's no reason to be sad, right? All that kind of spiritual bypassing and that kind of like fugue state of spirituality. Yeah, that's in evangelical Christianity too. It's in there heavy. And in fact, when I look at some of Mia's posts, I'm also kind of watching this like dead-eyed stare that she does when she makes these 7-second content clips, and she just says like whatever random fucking platitude of the day. She posts that up there and just starts awkwardly staring into your soul and smiling into the camera. I also see this kind of like no thoughts situation, or like this laser beam into your soul kind of situation where it feels like she's actively just staring into you, and that's kind of like weird. It's weird in a different direction, rather than just being like la la la, you know, hippy dippy, which by the way, you know, a lot of the new age folks do also be like huffing that za and things like that too, or doing medicine ceremonies, which as far as I'm concerned are probably a close practice, although ayahuasca and all that. They end up doing a lot of stuff like that, going down to Latin American countries and doing these kinds of things. And it's just like, okay, so you're participating in a cultural practice that isn't yours. You're doing all of these, ritual substances and things like that. And you think that like you're going to be walking around with like the sharpest, clearest focus after participating in things and doing things and chasing a feeling that maybe you shouldn't be chasing, doing, and whatever. As someone who's not a part of this culture and doesn't really understand like what's going on here, okay, sure, yeah, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, there's just so many points in these New Age to Christian testimonies where like, as a witch and as a Christian, I'm like, well, no shit, you got fucked up, but I digress. She starts talking about these people who are dissociating, right? And they're saying, oh, I have to protect my energy. I can't talk to you about all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. She's saying, oh, it's nice to just have normal conversations with people. And like, listen, I feel that too, right? I feel that too, just being on the internet. My witchy friends, my spiritual friends, my occult friends, a lot of us kind of have our own little spaces where we gather together and say, man, I don't know what the hell's going on the internet, but these people are wild. You know what I mean? I relate to Mia in that sense. What I don't like is the way in which she just invents new psych terms, like spiritual narcissism. That one has me like, whoa, okay, it's bad enough with the spiritual psychosis, and people are weaponizing this term to throw at anyone who has a spiritual experience now. But spiritual narcissism is just kind of like, maybe these folks are just selfish people. Maybe they just kind of suck. Like that's an option. It doesn't have to be some kind of like poorly used psych term that still then, rips the dignity off of people who actually do struggle with things like NPD and psychosis, right? Like, come on. And like at the end of part 2, she also starts talking about how like, she went to this Bible study with all these questions, and like, I'm totally gonna like... I'm just gonna let her say it. There you go. Here you go. This piece of it.
And eventually I get invited to a Bible study that my friend is running now. And my partner and I go. And I had this idea in my head that I was going to ask the question that was going to just like tear the whole like theology of Christianity apart, essentially, which is so arrogant now that I think about it. It's like 2 billion people are Christians. And I think that me, myself, and I is smart enough to tear down this theology that like such a huge portion of the world follows. Like maybe those 2 billion people aren't complete idiots, and maybe they know something that I don't. And so basically I go to the Bible study, and at the end of the Bible study, my friend asks if we have any questions, and I ask all of the questions I had. I probably had like 2 pages worth of questions written out. My partner also had like 2 pages of questions written out, and we went into a 5 or 6 hour deep dive answering all of the questions that we had. And my friend had solid answers for every single question that we asked. And I realized that the Bible is so much deeper than I thought it was. I thought it was just this very shallow, corrupted thing, and there wasn't much spiritual food there.
So she says this, right? And she's like, oh, I thought I was gonna have this gotcha, and like, 2 billion people must, know something that I don't if they follow this religion. By the way, that's a bandwagon fallacy. This idea that, well, if everyone else is doing it, it must be true in some way. Bandwagon fallacy, and let's not think like that. No. It could be that 2 billion people are just indoctrinated into this, colonized, and, had it shoved on them. Right? So, could be. But also, of course, naturally, if she's out here talking about fucking ancient Egyptian aliens and Atlantis and shit, then I wouldn't imagine she would know what the fuck's going on with Christianity any more than anyone else. So, 2 things can be true at once. Nonetheless, so she comes with all these questions, and apparently this guy had a solid answer, whatever this means, for every single question. Okay, I would like to know what the questions and the answers were, to be honest. But second of all, she says that she thought the Bible was just full of shallow nonsense. And I'm just like, where do people get this idea from? Where do people get this idea that the Bible is just shallow nonsense? I personally believe in this ecosystem of New Age and evangelicalism, that where it comes from is that the evangelical church sucks at actually exegeting or explaining the text in any meaningful way. And so people get this idea that the Bible is just a hot wash of bullshit. Then they go into the New Age with that idea, and they go dabble around with a bunch of nonsense they also don't understand. And then when they come back to Christianity, they're like, oh, Christianity is dumb because Pastor Bob didn't fucking explain it, right? And then they discover when the second someone knows anything about that book, that, oh no, maybe there's actually something more interesting than they thought. Yo, I tell you, I'm not a Christian because I have to be. I'm a Christian because the religion's really fucking interesting, and so is the source material. The Bible? Bible's crazy. Bible's a very interesting story and a very interesting piece of media, right? That you can pick apart and read over and over and again and still find new things to dig out of it. Very cool stuff. So I wish people, wouldn't write off a 2,000 to 4,000 year old text like that, but whatever. Once we get into part 3 of her testimony, this is where it just starts breaking down and sounding like every other story, right? She talks about having sleep paralysis issues, which, she says you can tell when there's something outside trying to get you. And I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, I've had my own sleep paralysis moments, and I can definitely tell when something is trying to get my attention, but I can also tell you that sleep paralysis is not necessarily a sign that something is out to get you. Sleep paralysis happens for a lot of reasons, some of which include stress, some of which include, just exhaustion, some of which include interruptions happening around your body while you're sleeping. For example, my fiance streams, and, we have the air conditioner in our bedroom, and it goes from the bedroom to the office where he streams, so the doors are open, the lights are on and everything. And I used to get sleep paralysis all the time in the summer because the light's pouring from the office into the bedroom, and I can sleep through all kinds of sound. I cannot sleep with any kind of light on. So I would always be caught between sleeping and waking, and that's where the sleep paralysis would really set in, right? Where I couldn't move my body, but I know that I'm still kind of dreaming, but I'm dreaming things that are real, but whatever. It's because my sleep is being interrupted. The second I got a fucking sleep mask so that I could block out the light, didn't happen anymore. Wow, you solved the problem. Was it demons? No, it was the fucking light being on. Congratulations. Other times, though, ironically, this Mia over here is saying that her fucking sleep paralysis demons are legitimate demons and shit. And I'll tell you what, in my experience, you know who was actually giving me shit during sleep paralysis? Not demons. Angels. Angels who were testing if I was putting my money where my mouth is. They were the ones that were screwing with me a little bit. So this idea that if something is scary or spooky and uncomfortable, it's immediately demons is very funny. And especially in the context of her kind of getting these, these dreams more and more as she's starting to go towards Christianity. It's always, oh, it must be demons because it made me uncomfortable. It's never, I wonder what this could be. I wonder what this is. I wonder what this means. There's never any curiosity. There's only ever fear. And that's something I notice a lot with these kinds of people, is that when you approach everything from the mindset of everything that isn't X is Y, everything that isn't Jesus is demons, that kind of black and white thinking is a great way to just get yourself fucked up at baseline. That's a great way to learn to not actually develop discernment. Because you're saying basically anything that isn't Jesus is demons. Jesus makes me feel safe and cozy. And anything that doesn't make me feel safe and cozy like Jesus is evil. Again, that's a great way to get all kinds of screwed up and to get your discernment radio, your little discernment signal all screwed up, because angels can also make you feel uncomfortable. Demons can also make you feel safe and cozy and happy. For the people who like to say the devil comes as an angel of light, they absolutely do not apply that fucking mode of thinking ever. You know what I mean? They never actually sit down and let themselves get curious. They only ever let themselves get scared. And that is something that blocks them from actually figuring out anything about their spirituality. But again, it always ends the same with and we burned all our tarot cards and we burned all our books. And it's just like, someone else said in the YouTube comment once, why does everyone's testimony sound exactly the same? And I gotta ask the same question. Why is it that everyone's testimony always sounds the same? I think it's because, as she says,
and I was just praying to Jesus, like, please just like protect me from this. And I was led to find a bunch of New Age to Jesus testimonies on YouTube, which you can find. They're very, very interesting. There's thousands of them now.
She had been led to find a bunch of New Age to Christian testimony. In knowing that, I feel like, I don't know, she probably got influenced by those things to do this stuff, and that's why now her story sounds exactly the same, because she ended up doing the same damn things, making the same damn goofy New Age mistakes, and ended up in the same damn spot of like needing something else to tell her that, you know, the responsibility was not hers to develop herself. Because when I hear stuff like, you're not supposed to be struggling and, you know, constantly growing and healing, the healing isn't supposed to go on forever. When I hear stuff like that, what I hear is, I don't want to take the responsibility to actually live my life. I don't want to take the responsibility to be a human being that is imperfect and grow, right? Which is ironic because she's saying all these things like she believes otherwise, but that's what comes out at the end. You're always going to have work to do. You're always going to have things to learn. That's never going to stop. That never stops. And even when you're dead, that doesn't fucking stop. If we go to Father Amort with his Memoirs of an Exorcist, even in death, these people are still needing prayers and all these other things and purgatory and the afterlife. So like, the idea that you can just get off scot-free and just be a happy little bunny is crazy. And it's also crazy in the context of some of her other videos. So aside from her like super dead-eyed stare that she likes to give the camera for those 7-second clips, she also says things like this.
When you stop practicing manifestation and you start following Jesus instead, it is so important that you stop treating God like a cosmic vending machine that is just going to give you whatever you want, whenever you want, and that if you behave a certain way, then you're going to get blessings from God in the very specific kinds of blessings that you're looking for rather than what His will is. You see, in the New Age and when you're practicing New Age manifestation, you are oftentimes doing something very similar to what can happen in a Christian walk, where instead of calling it keeping a high vibration or putting out your affirmations and doing things like that, keeping yourself in a high frequency to attract what you want, now, in your Christian walk, you can instead just call it, oh, well, I'm checking all of the boxes of what it means to be a good Christian. I'm not sinning, so I'm doing really good. So that means that God is going to bless me, rather than, you know, I'm keeping a high frequency, so now I'm going to get my manifestation to come to fruition. It's the same kind of thinking and it's the same mentality, just with different language. So it's so important to recognize that even when you leave the New Age, even when you stop practicing manifestation, your relationship with God can still subtly be tainted by the old ways that you used to view spirituality and the old ways that you used to practice manifestation. God is not your cosmic vending machine. It is not like if you put in a certain, equation into your Christian walk that now God is going to bless you with the specific things that you're asking for. God has a plan for your life that is far beyond what you can currently comprehend. And the things that you think that you want, that may be what God wants to give you, but God may also want to give you something else. God may have a different plan for your life that in the moment might not make a lot of sense, but in the long run, it's going to grow you in your faith. It's going to sanctify you further. It's going to, bring about God's will into your life that is so much bigger and better than anything that you could ever possibly plan for. So it's so important to recognize that when you stop practicing manifestation and you choose to follow Jesus instead, it is now about relationship. God is no longer this cosmic vending machine that you can just, create your own reality and you just have to put in the right frequencies and the right affirmations and the right intentions to get whatever you want to create for your reality. You have to stop being your own God and recognize that God is your heavenly Father. You have a relationship with Him now. It's not just this cosmic energy exchange of transactions and manifestations. It's a relationship that you have with your Creator that is so much different and so much deeper and more beautiful and more fulfilling than what you had in your old life when you were practicing manifestation. And so you want to get rid of those ways of thinking, take those thoughts captive and renew your mind on the truth of who God is, that He's so much bigger than these limited ways of viewing God as a cosmic vending machine who's just here to give you whatever you ask for. God has a plan for your life that is so much better, and the relationship that you have with him is so much more important than anything that you could be given in this life.
She says, with just like no hint of irony, this idea that like, hey, if you go from New Age to Christian, your mindset doesn't magically update itself. You still have to do the work, right? And she says things that I don't disagree with when she says things like God's not a cosmic vending machine. I say that too, because it's true, right? Being Christian does not guarantee your life to be good. Just like being New Age doesn't guarantee you to be all high frequency, vibrational, whatever the fuck. Like, that is true. And yet, at the same time, she continues to frame it in terms of like self-gratification, right? She's saying you can't just like check all the boxes. Oh, I'm not sinning and I'm doing all the prayers and stuff, so I should have a good life. Like, yeah, of course, that's true. You can't do all those things and just expect God to give you everything you want, right? That's prosperity gospel, which is a fucking heresy for a reason. But she still says it's about what God wants for you and about the relationship, and you know, what God wants for you will be better than what you want for yourself. So she's still framing it as in like, oh, if you just give up and let God do everything for you, you're going to still have a great time and your life's going to be awesome. She's still framing it as in this like, hey, stop manifesting, stop praying for, stop asking, stop expecting, and just let God do whatever, and you'll be even happier. This is another thing I see with a lot of like ex-witch and ex-New Age to Christians. They're like, the power I get with Jesus is so much more than witchcraft, or the peace and the fulfillment and the happiness and the joy I get with my relationship with God is so much more than I ever got with witchcraft. And it's like, why do you continue to try and sell this faith in terms of what you personally can gain? Something I will never understand. Something, I mean, like, I guess I can't say I'll never understand. I understand the draw, right? Because a lot of people don't want to do things for nothing. But I'm at the point in my practice where whether or not I get what I want or not, whether or not I am happier getting what God gives me versus not, that doesn't come into the equation. I'm not Christian in any sense because I think it's going to earn me favors or get me an afterlife that's nice or whatever. I'm Christian because I believe in the tenets of the faith, which are love God, love one another, which are make this earth a good place, do justice, be compassionate. Like, I'm Christian because I believe in the core message of the faith. And because I believe that if everyone acted on that core message of love and justice and mercy, that this world would be a beautiful place. That we can make this world a beautiful place if we just get enough people to stop looking after their own ass and start looking after their neighbors. It has nothing to do with whether or not I am rewarded now or in the afterlife or anywhere else. And when you get to that point of Christianity, now you're talking. Now you're cooking with gas. And these New Agers to Christians, they just talk the same language. They say the same language as the Christians to the New Agers. They all say the same thing, which is that, well, in my old spiritual paradigm, you know, I was unhappy, sad, and miserable. In my new spiritual paradigm, I get everything I want and an ice cream cone on top of it. And it's like, you're just doing the same fucking circle jerk over and over and over again. So, you know, I've focused a lot on Mia today just because I wanted to, like, not just do like a passing overview of like an ex-witch to Christian testimony like I do sometimes, but really like dig in here and take a look at this Mia person and the kind of stuff she's doing. And like, again, what I find is just that like a lot of the people who go from New Age to Christian actually didn't like they did a lateral move, right? They did a lateral move where they're going to talk this language with this pretty backdrop, or they're going to talk this language with that pretty backdrop. Basically, you can either do a little evil eye token and talk your shit, or you can put a cross on it and talk your shit. But the fact is that the shit being talked between New Age and Evangelical Christianity is the same shit. It's the same garbage. It's the same conspiracy, lack of interest in actual academia, lack of interest in like actual spiritual growth, and just a continuous seeking of some outer power to numb you and take your responsibility of your life away from you. Not to say that everything that, you know, happens to these people is like their fault or something they could have prevented. Again, obviously, if they're struggling with mental health issues, if they're struggling, like, you know, with the loss of a parent or like abusive relationships, like that's not like their fault. You know, you can't blame yourself for shit other people do to you or that happens to you or around you. But there's never any like, the best way I can describe it is this, right? Again, can't see the forest for the trees. These people are operating in a dollhouse. These people are operating like too close to the situation to see what it is. You know? they're sitting here saying, oh, well, I worship this God and now I worship Jesus. And they're still acting like this other God and Jesus are like action figures, right? Again, they're in the dollhouse. They're living their life as a doll in this dollhouse full of like fake shit, full of like, you know, fake spirituality, of like conspiracy and just false shit, like just verifiably, demonstrably incorrect shit. Living in this world where like they think that it's a matter of switching deities and not understanding actually like what the divine really is. And as someone who has managed to get out of the dollhouse and go through the entire mystic journey, start to finish, and see it, once you're out of the dollhouse, you can't live the life of a doll anymore. And when I see New Age to Christian stuff or Christian to New Age, I see a lot of people just going to a different room of the dollhouse. They're still not living the life of a human. They're still living the life of a doll. They're living the life of you know, just kind of spiritual counterfeit. Whether they call it Jesus, whether they call it Akati, whether they call it whatever, they're not actually seeing any of these entities for what they are, who they are, and what their function is in the fabric of reality. And that's what causes these kinds of moments of ungrounding, of just constantly going from practice to practice, thing to thing, from trying 5 million different rituals and meditations and fucking drugs and this and that and up and down to try and get and manufacture these experiences. And it's another case where I look at someone like Mia and I say, Mia, you didn't have a business coaching anyone in the New Age, and you don't have any business coaching someone now. And it's interesting because when she said she was in the New Age, she said she had a coach, and now here she is being a coach, just in the opposite direction, but like with no greater cognizance than whatever coach she was working with in the New Age. It's just, it's the epitome of the blind leading the blind, and it's just something that, you know, I look at it, I give it an old college try. I always go into looking at these things like genuinely ready to hear someone out, but then every time I just hear the same damn tells that these people are living the lives of dolls in a dollhouse. They're living these very, you know, can't see the forest for the trees type of life, and it's difficult. But it also, after looking into this again, I find myself saying like, I don't even think I need to concern myself with stuff like this, because it's so self-contained. It's so like outside the realm of anyone who's actually interested in Christian theology or occult science. Like it's just, it feels like the New Age to Evangelical pipeline's the fucking kids table of the family gathering, and all the adults are actually like out here, you know, drinking bourbon and playing poker while the kids, you know, eat their fucking macaroni and cheese and deviled eggs or whatever. Like, you know, it just doesn't feel fucking real. It doesn't feel serious. It feels like nonsense. Probably because when you actually study spirituality enough, you realize it is. Not to be too harsh in one direction or the other, but from an outsider looking in, all of it's stupid. From the New Age to the Christianity, all of it's fucking dumb. So let me know what you think in the comments, and let me know if there's other people that you want me to take a look at and do a little spiritual audit of their content on. And with that said, guys, I will see you next time for more good chats, and I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. See ya.